Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Gunther.
Who's left? All right, everybody can hear me okay? Good. So thanks especially for joining me on Wednesday afternoon at 4:30. Not only is it Wednesday afternoon at 4:30, but I'm talking about Eclipse, which on paper is not a very exciting topic. But I promise you, this may not revolutionize the world, but as a developer, can help make you more productive. So today I'm not going to talk about anything new, exciting, or fancy. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the Eclipse tools in the Cloud Foundry community. I'm learning that there's a lot of people out there that use Eclipse. I've talked to a lot of you over the last few days. I haven't found anyone that was aware of this project. So I want to educate you a little bit about what we're doing, and then talk about opportunities where you can join the community and help us out. So a little bit about myself. I'm with IBM. I'm in the product management team, and I am responsible across our WebSphere portfolio for our strategy and what we're doing in cloud. So a little bit more about kind of my background. I started as a developer in IBM, spent a lot of time in test, hacking away in code. Java, PHP were the main languages I used. And then I spent a lot of time in test. And when I was in test, my job was to write customer applications, like our customers would use, and then deploy them and scale them and try to mimic production environments. So this was before DevOps was a term. And I was starting to live DevOps, and I was living a lot of the pain before a lot of the tools and initiatives existed today. So then the opportunity came where we were starting to do agile development in IBM. I said, I got to be a part of this. I get what we need to be doing. So I spent a couple of years driving agile development. And then I started thinking, well, our products aren't very agile. So I was part of the team that started, if you've heard of the WebSphere Liberty Profile, it's our lightweight conversion of WebSphere designed for cloud. I spent 3 years growing that team. And then cloud was emerging and platform as a service, and I saw lots of opportunities for us to take different pieces that we've been doing around developers and bringing that into this environment. So I moved into product management, and I've really spent the last year just focused on developers, and how we can help developers be more productive. So why Eclipse? If you're not familiar with Eclipse, it is the leading IDE for Java developers in particular. And you've heard some of the statistics. If you saw James Bayer talk yesterday, he did the comparison of PASs, and he mentioned that, hey, we chose to do Java in this comparison because we're just observing that most developers in our platform are using Java. From a Bluemix perspective, we're seeing Java, JavaScript. It's a very prevalent language out there, and Eclipse is the IDE for it. It's free, it's open, there's great governance around it, it's a vibrant community. We're modeling a lot of what we're doing in Cloud Foundry after the Eclipse Foundation. So it started very much like Cloud Foundry did. There was a company, in this case it was IBM. We had a lot of code. We saw a vision around an open developer platform. At the time, everything was Microsoft and .NET, and there wasn't a good alternative to that. So we got together with a couple of other companies, and then 3 years later, we formed a foundation once we launched. And look where it's grown over 10 years. I did a quick count this morning. There's over 100 sponsors. We have over 100 projects and sub-projects, and maybe 200, I stopped scrolling and counting, and over 1,700 plugins that we can leverage on the marketplace. So just think of where Cloud Foundry can be in 10 years if we keep this similar type of pace up. So Eclipse, Cloud Foundry together, happy developers. When I came out and first got to IBM and was writing code, I did a lot of Visual Studio programming in college, was used to the IDE. And I walked into a world with a lot of programmers who've been around a long time, and it was the strangest thing. They were all in text editors and VI, which I actually have grown to love VI. And it was just a different world. And it was like if you were using the IDE, you were a bad developer. I couldn't disagree with that more. There's nothing wrong with the IDE. So if you're out there and you get that stigma, don't worry about it. I think it's kind of gone away over the years. But the IDE right now is not what people thought it was originally, which was, oh, it's going to write me snippets of code. You still have to understand how to write code. You have to be a developer. But the world is growing more complex. and debugging in an environment where you're distributed across, who knows where your cloud runs or where your instances are running. And all the different services and APIs that you're integrating and trying to debug those environments together, deploying to those different environments. As we get into DevOps and continuous integration, and there's nothing wrong with tools helping you be productive to do that. And I think that's where Eclipse and Cloud Foundry can really, really help accelerate developers. So we saw an opportunity for partnership. So Pivotal has done a lot of great work over the last few years. They had a Cloud Foundry integration project that was hosted in spring, getting some good traction. I think about 200 downloads a day or 200 downloads a week. We were using it ourselves in IBM and using that to help develop and push apps to Cloud Foundry. Inside IBM, we have our WebSphere developer tools, and we were starting to experiment with how do we leverage this in the cloud? And how do we build on top of, at the time, we were thinking some of the stuff Pivotal was working on. And how do we help with things like services integration and remote debugging and incremental deployments? And I forget how it came about one day, but I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and a bunch of us were in town for a leadership summit, and I was talking with Chris Ferris, if he's still around. And we're just like, why are we not working together with the community on this? It's absolutely ridiculous. We are not the only ones with this problem. So Chris made the connection, and we gave Ryan Morgan a call from Pivotal. And over the next couple of weeks, we had some engineering swaps where the engineers from Pivotal, the engineers from IBM were sharing what we were doing around tools. And at this point, we were about a week or two away from launching the foundation. And we said, let's take all this Eclipse energy and let's put it in the foundation. So that's what we did. And we said, why were we not working together? Both sides were really excited. And so we took all the tools, and Pivotal donated in February all the tools that they had in Spring Source, and they moved it into the Cloud Foundry incubation project, building on that 1.0 release that was released in 2012. We joined the project at that time, and in April, the new community project released its first joint release, version 1.6.1. And now where I hope, if I'm going to not to be too presumptuous, but starting today, your contributions will help us accelerate that. So we do plan to release something about every 6 weeks, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. And one of the things I will say right now, it's been a great collaboration. There's nobody but IBM and Pivotal in the community. I've seen a lot of energy around, Java's the first thing you think of, but I think Eclipse can be broader than that. And I really, really would love to see, more people participating and helping us in this community. So the model's pretty simple. It's similar to what we're doing with the Cloud Foundry platform itself. Common layer, open source, we're all working together, and that's got the bulk of the functionality. Because the bulk of what we're doing in Cloud Foundry is shared across distributions. Things like pushing applications, deploying applications, configuring deployment options, updating applications, cloning Cloud Foundry instances, the basic administration, the application development that you need to be doing. And what we've started to do with the community over the last few months is build an extension point so that vendors can build on top of it. So to date, we've been using it for things like custom branding. So in IBM, we have a set of Bluemix tools that exist on the Eclipse marketplace. And that builds right on top of this open core. And really, all we add to it is some branding for IBM Bluemix. And we add some specific server adapters that are only useful if you're in a Bluemix environment. There may be some specific things that are only useful if you're in a Pivotal web services environment. We don't want to bloat the core with everybody's specific Cloud Foundry code, but keep the core to the core, and then let people extend and build on top of that. So a little bit more about that core. What it does is it builds right on top of the Eclipse Web Tools project. So if you're familiar with WTP, that's in one of the Eclipse core projects, has a nice community around it. And we're inheriting all of those benefits. Then we provide that basic interaction with Cloud Foundry today, really around application deployment and then binding, unbinding services. I think it can be a lot more than that, though. And then the extension. So extensions to help you do customized brandings. Maybe you have your own documentation you want to link in. Maybe you want to integrate the process for signing up for accounts and IDs to whatever cloud that you're hosting, or something that's specific to your environment. We've got the default implementation there for WAR, standalone applications, Grails. I hope that we get some more there in the future. But you can now support new application types that are not part of the default through the extensions as well. So charts are boring. I don't like charts. So if the demo gods are doing well, I'm going to show a quick demo and point out some of the other things that are in the open core today. All right, so I've got my Eclipse environment up. Let me just adjust to the resolution. There we go. And what I have in here is just a stock trader application. Just because I have skills and I'm familiar with it, I developed this application with the Liberty profile. So it's using that for Java. It's just a basic WAR file. And what's nice about the Liberty profile is I can run that on Run Pivotal IO, or I can run it on Bluemix. It's built into both platforms. So what I've done is I've installed the Bluemix extension just because I have access to the Bluemix platform. I have that account. You could just as easily install the version that helps you, and deploy into other clouds as well. And what I want to do is demonstrate how easy it is to push an application that I've got in my IDE into a running Cloud Foundry instance from the tools. No need to go to the command line. That's the goal. So like you would expect, if I go to my application, if you're an Eclipse developer, you want to go run it somewhere. So I do a run on server. And because I've installed the plugin, it'll run local today. I'm going to define a new server. So I've got IBM Bluemix underneath here. If I wanted to, because I've got the core in there installed too, I've got Pivotal Cloud Foundry. The steps and process that you're going to see are the same. And I'm going to select Bluemix there. And I'm going to enter in my credentials. I'm going to click Validate Account. So this is a nice little utility. What it does is a CF target. So if you're on the command line, you're used to CF target. This is going to go do a target to the environment, fetch my organ spaces, and make sure that I'm connected and everything works right. So it came back. That's good. That means I've got an internet connection. So thank you all for not overwhelming it. And it means that I've got, I haven't typed in my name or password wrong. So there's my organ spaces. I haven't done much to my account, so it's just the default dev space. Here's where I can go. I can select my stock trading application, Cloud Trader. I've pushed it there to the application. There's a little bug here. Again, we need help in the community. So ignore that error, which is meaningless. I'm going to name my application. We're in San Francisco, so we'll put an SF. So here's where, when I go and I push an application, as you know, you can customize the build pack URL and point it to something, a specific build pack in the community, something that you forked and hosted somewhere. I'm going to leave the defaults like you can, but this is a spot where you can go and customize what build packet it is. In Bluemix, the default is the Liberty profile. If I wanted to run it on Tomcat, I just would simply put the Tomcat URL. If I was running on Run Pivotal IO, it's just the opposite. Tomcat's the default, but if I wanted to run Liberty, I just stick the URL in there. So I'm going to do that. We're going to take the default. A 512 container is fine for this application. We'll let it start it. Now I've got a spot where I can create services. So it uses a database. I want to move that into the cloud. So I'm going to name my data source. It'll fetch all of the services that are running in your Cloud Foundry instance. So in this case, it gives me a list of everything that's in Bluemix. I originally wrote this app with DB2, so we've got a service for that in the cloud. Like any Cloud Foundry, there's all sorts of other NoSQL databases, Mongo, Cloud, et cetera. I can pick lots of stuff, but we'll go with that. And then I can add environment variables right here as well. So again, things that could take different steps and different commands on the command line, nice and integrated right into the IDE, making it really easy for developers. But I don't need any environment variables. I'm going to click Finish, and that's it. It's pushing my application. So it's the same thing as if I was on the command line, I did a CF push, and I would have had to do a target and all those different commands and try to remember, oh, what's the flag for that? And if you're like me, I'm still not used to the new command line, so I try to remember things from the old command line. And I'm just an IDE guy. There's nothing wrong with the command line, but I'm an IDE guy. So it's out there. It's pushing the application. It's testing the speed of the Wi-Fi here. And to prove to you that it's no lie, let's go and log in and make sure that it worked. I'm going to log in to the Bluemix Cloud Foundry instance. So it takes me there. Now the app is still starting up, but you can see there's my application, there's my data source, the instance of the service, and when it bounded the service to the application. Once it's done starting, it probably will take another 20, 30 seconds. I'll be able to hit the URL, access the application, and I'm off and running. So really, really, really quick, powerful way to quickly push applications. Now we've got some other stuff there in the tools as well. So if I go out, one of the things I can do is I can explore the server itself. So here I can double click. It tells me information about my Cloud Foundry instance. I can connect and disconnect to it. If I look under applications and services, let's make this a little bit bigger. Oh, well, it's still starting up, so it's not available yet. Let's see if that started. Not quite there. There we go. Now it's running. I should be able to hit the application. Yeah, not yet. Now the Wi-Fi will catch up to us in a second. But I can click on that. I can go under Applications and Services. And once it's up and running, you'll see information there that will point to, on the right-hand side in that space, how many instances are running. It'll give me the IP addresses of my containers. I can change the container size. I can change the number of instances. Some of the basic things that you can do on the CF command line integrated right there in the IDE for you to do. We'll give it one more try. If not, we're OK. I don't know why that's being so slow. Anyway, yeah. So just a quick demo, but you can see there just some of the, the nice easy use technology around that. So some questions that people asked. I'm going to speed up a little bit so we can get back on track with time. How do I develop my own extension? That's the first question. So maybe you're not ready to start doing heavy lifting, getting in there, contributing code, but you've seen the tools. I can deploy to Pivotal Web Services. I can deploy to any Cloud Foundry instance that I install and target. I can deploy to Bluemix. Maybe you want to customize things for a Cloud Foundry instance that you're doing. You want to extend it and change it a little bit. So the first thing I would say is take a look at the Pivotal Cloud Foundry branding plugin. It's nicely written. It's a good example. We use that as a starting point for what we did in Bluemix. And then you can see there, and I'll put the presentation up on SlideShare, and there's links at the end to Pivotal Tracker, to the code in GitHub, so you can get right to that class, but you can see what you want to look for. Create your own branding plugin just by cloning it. It's a simple, easy way to start. Try adding a new extension. So there's an application wizard file. So maybe if you want to deploy your own type of module and you want to customize the deployment process, the flow that happens when you push an application, you can see some code there on how to do that. And then you can go to that URL there too if you wanted to look at a vendor-specific example to see what are some of the different things that people are customizing on top of the core. You can download it from the Eclipse Marketplace. What I really hope to get people excited about is contributing to the framework. What we have and what I showed you is really just the beginnings of what a small handful of developers have done in a couple of years over Pivotal and then as a community for the last couple of months. Like anything else, start with the mailing list. If you have some changes that you want to contribute, open a bug, fork the code, right? Do the patch, and put a pull request out there. And we'll review it, and we'll adopt it if it's applicable. But do take a look at the Pivotal Tracker, because there are just a number of bugs that we need to get fixed, and bugs are simple ways to get started. This is a little bit of a brain dump from me. Some of this stuff was in Pivotal Tracker. Some of it is just things that I've invented in my head and probably haven't done a good job of sharing with everybody yet. But if you give me a microphone, I'll talk ideas. So some of the things that, where we can take this and where it can get more exciting. So number one, better debugging. It's really a big value of the IDE. When we get into real global production Cloud Foundry deployments, and more of those will be coming, Think about the experience of doing DevOps and continuous integration in these deployments and being able to debug what's going on. And I know people say, oh, the IDE isn't the place for debugging in those environments. You know, we have monitoring and analytics tools that help us do that. It's DevOps, this continuous integration. These worlds are coming together. As the developer and operator truly become one, I don't know why, from a tools perspective, we're still keeping those things separate. So how do we integrate and bring those things together into a single environment for developers to help them in this new world and help them be more production? Think beyond the applications in that space. You know, one of the things we've heard a lot this week, OpenStack, Bosch, Docker, I think those terms fly around every 5 minutes. One word I thought we'd hear more of are APIs. Cloud, APIs, APIs, APIs. It's not just about developing APIs, but as a developer, I'm consuming other APIs. I'm discovering APIs. Yeah, there's API management software to help that, but how does that come together in an IDE for the developer? How does that come together for just service endpoints? Why can't I do things with Bosch and OpenStack straight from the framework? Straight from there, from the developer workspace. Intersection with new community efforts, so .NET, Docker, you know, all these things, to me, developers are going to have to be working with these things. It should be there in the IDE. And as more and more global deployments come, there's opportunities around globalization, internationalization. If you're a developer and you're struggling with something, if you use Eclipse and you have to go to the command line or go to another tool, I would challenge you to think about how you can make that better, come to the community, and help us build it. There's lots and lots of stuff there. If you can dream it, you can build it. So some useful links, and as I said, I'll put these out on SlideShare, and you can get started. The first one is just some basic documentation on the Eclipse plugin framework that Pivotal started. It's a great getting started type guide to get a feel with it. You go to the Pivotal tracker, read through the product backlog and what it is that, you know, the community's been thinking of doing next. And then the source code and everything's right on GitHub with directions of how to help you get started with installing it as well if you wanted to play around with it. So that's it. I promised I'd help people get back on track with time, so I'm going to cut it a little bit short. Thanks for staying with me here in the afternoon. If you've got developers using Eclipse, if you use Eclipse, I mean, we really, really would love to have your help in the community. So come get active, and looking forward to working together. Thank you.